I can bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold.
This is where the fun begins.
Hello there.
Hello and welcome to Jedi Knights, the official Star Wars podcast for JoyClicks. Welcome to episode number 90. I'm Mike Connors. As always, I'm here with my co-host, Christian Buckley. How are you today, my man?
I'm good, Mike. I realize, again, we really bolstered these numbers when we did that Mandalorian 2 episodes a week for a little bit, but we're gonna hit episode 100 this year, which is very cool.
I mean, yeah, we may have bolstered the numbers in the sense that, like, we released, was it 2 a week during that point or whatever?
Yeah.
But, I mean, we still did 90 episodes.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely an accomplishment to be proud of.
Oh, hell yeah. I think it's the longest running show I've produced, so.
Well, I mean, here's to another 100 episodes,
hell
Christian.
yeah.
We got to do something big for the 100th episode. It seems like just yesterday we were like figuring out what to do for episode number 66, but here we are.
I know. It's exciting.
Anyways, how are you, my man? What you been up to?
I'm good. Been spending some time working on the resume the past couple weeks, so I've allowed myself a bit more time to relax, so I've dipped back into Destiny in my downtime, which one of the best games ever made. Big fan of Destiny 2. In terms of Star Wars, nothing much, honestly, outside of Bad Batch, but I'm hungry. I'm ready for more. I'm looking forward to this holiday season. But what about you? What's been up on your Star Wars plate?
Honestly, not much Star Wars stuff. You said that you're working on your resume. For me, yeah, it's been pretty busy with work and stuff, but I'm hoping that, within the next few weeks, I can kind of like get back into. Honestly, I want to pick up Battlefront again. I want to play some more Battlefront. Just haven't in a while. But yeah, are you putting your video portfolio together, Christian?
Yeah,
got some good clips in there.
Yeah, doing my best to try and make a reel out of multiple episodes of 90 plus episodes of all these other shows that are multiple hours long. Trying my best to cut together a reel.
Yeah, you certainly have a lot of content to put it real together. Well, anyways, man, we got some really interesting Star Wars news to talk about today. It's pretty heavy on the rumor side of the Force. We were talking before the pod just a bit about some of the things that have been floating around Star Wars ether here. But I think first we should start off with how we always start off the podcast. The segment from the Jedi Archives, where Christian and I both choose a Wikipedia article to bring to the table and educate ourselves and you, the listeners, on a piece of Star Wars lore, whether that be canon or otherwise. So, Christian, what did you choose for this episode of Jedi Knights?
Sure, I chose Kolto.
Kolto?
Kolto with a K. I chose Kolto.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, you will in a moment. Kolto was a medical substance in use during the time of the High Republic era. During a skirmish on the Amexine station against Nile marauders, the Jedi Wayseeker Orla Jarani shut emergency doors to prevent the Nile from reaching her and fellow Jedi. Comac Vitus. Vitus began coughing, having inhaled dust particles as a result of the long dormant doors closing, but stated that the issue would be easily fixed by a Kolto rinse. I did not know it was at play in the High Republic, because my familiarity with it is Manan, the fish race, are mining Kolto on this planet, and they are this neutral presence in the war between the Sith Empire and the Republic.
So that's what the people on Manan were making or mining. I totally forgot about that. Definitely coming back to me though. Interesting that it's making another appearance in the High Republic. Does it say like which High Republic installment that come from?
Kolto was canonically mentioned in the 2021 young adult novel The High Republic Into the Dark, which we both own, written by Claudia Gray. In the Legends continuity, Kolto originated in KOTOR.
Very cool. I have yet to read Into the Dark, actually.
Same. I started it. I
I'm
was really
behind.
into it, but I didn't finish it.
We should, yeah, at some point, I feel like we should decide to read it, but that's a story for another time, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, well, I know that I think it was what last month, Rising Storm came out too. I
Yeah.
just kind of missed that. But we have some, or at least I have some High Republic work to do in terms of really gaining all the canon stuff. Hopefully, sometime this fall, I can get into that. But that was a great pick,
Thank you.
Christian.
What did you pick?
Good stuff. So I picked Fortress Vader, also known as Darth Vader's castle. So this is, I think it was first put on screen in Rogue One, where director Krennic comes and visits Vader on the volcanic planet of Mustafar. But we also see the creation of Darth Vader's castle in the Charles Soule Darth Vader comics, where Darth Vader uses like a mask of like a former Sith like Lord basically to create his fortress on Mustafar, and it takes him like 7 times because he just wants to get the he wants to get the feel just right. I'm not sure if you remember that, but yeah, so it's very interesting stuff constructed on 12 BBY, and yeah, I just always thought it looked really cool, and I also have my friends bought me for my birthday a Lego version of Darth Vader's castle, so I have that somewhere around here. Good stuff.
That's very cool. I want to say in the Trevorrow Duel of the Fates, I think also Kylo Ren goes to Vader's castle at some point at the opening of the film, the way he goes to Mustafar in the forests in the Rise of Skywalker opening, but
Yeah, I think in that canceled screenplay, he goes to Darth Vader's castle on Mustafar and like finds a holocron that was meant for Darth Vader.
I think
Like
so.
yeah, it was meant for Darth Vader, created by Emperor Palpatine, like just for Darth Vader's eyes only. And Kylo Ren opens it and like gets like horribly disfigured because of like some explosion that happens. He wasn't supposed to open the holocron. That's what I remember from the Colin Trevorrow screenplay. Very interesting stuff. I always thought Fortress Vader looked really cool. It's very menacing looking, and very funny how they kind of put it in Rogue One, but didn't necessarily confirm that it was on Mustafar. Anyways, good stuff all around.
Oh yeah.
So I think we should move on from the Jedi Archive stuff that we had brought to the table today to talk about some news. I'm going to talk about the news first, and then get into some of the rumors.
Responsible.
But this is very responsible. Yeah, not to mess it up. Not to confuse the listeners here, but so the first thing that I saw, and this actually broke last Tuesday, I think after we recorded, as always, this always happens with Jedi Knights. So The Mandalorian scored big with 24 Emmy nominations. This is not super surprising. I think that they also did pretty well with the first season and their Emmy nominations. So they were obviously nominated for a lot of them. I'm not going to go through all of them, but some highlights. Best Drama Series, that's like one of the big ones. And then Timothy Oliphant and Carl Weathers were nominated for Best Guest Actor in a Drama Series, Giancarlo Esposito as Best Supporting Actor in a Drama Series, and Outstanding Sound Editing for a Comedy or Drama Series, 1 hour. Obviously, like I said, there are a lot more. Very well deserved. Christian, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I'm not surprised, right? Because Star Wars typically is pushing tech when it comes, or like for the most part throughout its entire history, the series, it tries to be innovative with some new form of technology for filmmaking. And Mandalorian season 1 absolutely did that. Mando season 2, you assume based off of what they talk about, refined that. So that makes sense for sure. I mean, I talked about this with Jack on Excelsior this week because another Disney production, WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier both got, I think altogether like 28 or 29. It was like 23 for WandaVision and then 5 for Falcon. Nice. So like clearly Disney will throw up the marketing money to make a campaign for these award shows. So it makes sense. Timothy Olyphant as nominated as an actor for guest actor in a drama series, like, I guess, like, was there really nothing else on all of TV that was a bit more in depth than that? Like, that was a cool cameo, like, appearance, supporting role, guest star, but, like, I don't know.
Yeah, honestly, I wasn't as like questioning of Timothy Oliphant as I was questioning of Carl Weathers. Like, I feel like Carl Weathers, like his character Grief Karga, just had a bigger role in the first season.
Sure.
And so it's kind of like, I don't know, it kind of like raised my eyebrows when I saw this, and I was like, really? Like Carl Weathers for guest actor? Honestly, I had written this in the show notes, but I was kind of hoping to see Bill Burr maybe like get a guest actor for a drama series nomination, because that one episode that he was in, I think it was episode 6 or episode 7. I think was probably one of the more like standout pieces of acting in like Bill Burr's career that I've ever seen, and like just generally like very impressive. Just like the his emotion through that episode. So like I don't know. I guess personally I would have rather seen like maybe Bill Burr get a nom instead of Carl Weathers.
No, yeah, like, when I first saw that in the show notes, I was like, I mean, even Bill Burr, I don't even know, but, like, then you just reminded me, yeah, he had that thing where he was talking about, Inferno Squad, right, or, like, Operation Cinder, and, like, that was really good. That was, like, one of the highlight moments of that season in terms of, like, acting and emotion, so, like, yeah, that's interesting, because, again, listen, I loved Cobb Vanth, right? Seeing him was super cool, and even Grief Karga, loved both of their episodes. But like in all of TV, like though, like TV's a huge platform, dude. Like it's like I think in the same category. Same category. I think Don Cheadle was nominated for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and he was in that episode for like 2 minutes, and he responded to this. He's like, I didn't know this was coming. Don't ask me about it. I don't know why, but thank you. Like, it's just got money for the campaigns.
That's what I was about to say. Like, do you think it just kind of ends up being the fact that like Disney just has like a shit ton of money to throw at this, right? Like, they can basically win and buy influence when it comes to like these award shows just by, I don't know, like you said, just spending money on the campaigns. Because I didn't even know Don Cheadle was nominated for a guest actor in a drama series, and I love Don Cheadle, but like I don't think he really, like, because I saw Falcon and Winter Soldier, and you're right, like he was only in there for literally less than 2 minutes. Like I don't think he deserves a nom like that, just because like his role was almost non-existent.
Yeah.
Like, so do you think it just comes down to the fact that they just have all this money to throw at it?
I mean, I can't speak to the Emmys because I never read into the Emmys at all, but that's how the Oscars work. Like, if your studio, if your production company, I guess, doesn't have the funds to make for your consideration and like send out all these copies of things to the people voting on these things, if they don't have money to throw your way for that, odds are you're going to get overshadowed by a company that does have money. So that is a side to the award shows, and I imagine it works for the Emmys the same it does for the Oscars. But I not to discredit what Mando Season 2 does well, though, because I think there are some really impressive things that are worthy of nominations. Like, there's plenty of episodes, I think, that were highlights, like the Ahsoka episode. The way they shot, like, with the forest and the cinematography there was impressive for this type of series. So, like, definitely there's stuff that's warranted on this nomination list. It's just interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, outstanding sound editing, like that's one that I could easily see go to The Mandalorian. And like, honestly, like even the one that I mentioned earlier, Giancarlo Esposito for Best Supporting Actor, like I thought he did a great job. Like, that's a well deserved. Those are well deserved noms. I guess when you start to see like, oh, Disney has like 50 Emmy nominations combined throughout all of their stuff. Like,
maybe more even, because this is just between their two like live action Disney Plus shows. There could be other stuff that's been nominated too. Like Clone Wars, I think, got nominated for stuff, right? Or that's daytime Emmys, but
yeah, I think so. But still, like, it's just ridiculous. Like, that they can just rack in that many nominations. Because yeah, like winning an Emmy is one thing, but like, being nominated is also a pretty big deal. So like they have the opportunity to go now on their social media accounts and they're send out press releases and stuff like that to build more hype around their brand, like being like, hey, like look at this, we took home 50 Emmy nominations.
Sure, yeah.
uh, but that's just the way it is. It's the society that we live in. And
Mhm.
honestly, like you said, I think Mando, and I'm sure WandaVision, Falcon, there are some Emmy nominations, and probably most of them are well deserved. So good stuff with Mando. Hopefully they bring some home
Sure,
because they deserve it.
definitely.
Um, so speaking of Mandalorian, actually, so everybody was talking about the big season 2 finale. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it yet, you probably should just go watch it. But Luke Skywalker shows up big time. And Disney, every so often, releases on Disney Plus what they call Disney Gallery. And basically, it's, behind the scenes stuff. I'm sure we talked about it on this podcast before. Um, so they've announced that on August 24th, a new Disney Gallery is going to drop. And it's all about the making of the season 2 finale of The Mandalorian. I'm sorry, August 25th. So yeah, basically it's just going to chronicle the making of. I'm sure it's going to dive deep into how they got Luke Skywalker to be such a secret for so long. Because for those who don't remember, that was not even leaked at all. It was a complete surprise. So I'm sure they're going to talk with Mark Hamill or something like that about doing a faithful portrayal of the character. It should be really interesting because I think overall this is one of the big climaxes of The Mandalorian, and so seeing that from behind the scenes perspective should be pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch this. I haven't watched all of the Disney galleries for stuff that I even
Me either.
I'm into, but I don't think I
Same.
watched the original one for Mandalorian. That was like the multiple episodes. I saw the highlights of like the clip of Filoni talking about Phantom Menace and stuff like that. Um, I did like how Mando season 2 did their gallery thing, and it was a single standalone thing for the entire season, because I remember talking to you about that, and I was like, I'm really surprised they didn't talk about the Luke thing at all in this production, like, which in hindsight I guess makes sense, because they were probably getting that Disney gallery ready while Mando season 2 was going on, and if they were talking about Luke in that Disney gallery, there would have been another avenue where it could have leaked, so it makes sense
Yeah,
to split it up this way, I think.
that's basically what I thought too. Like the more people that they have working on these sorts of things, like the more opportunities they have for stuff to leak.
Yeah.
And if they were going to talk about Luke in the first Disney gallery that they put for season 2, yeah, it just would have had a greater opportunity to get out there before the episode dropped. But interesting that they're kind of circling back and going back to this and sort of uncovering what it was like behind the scenes, because I think a lot of fans are really interested in that. Um, Basically, for the reason, like I said, Luke Skywalker was just a complete surprise. It was not leaked at all.
Right.
And it's pretty hard to do that in today's day and age. Like, people things leak all the time. So it should be interesting to see sort of like, how they managed to do that on some level. And also just, thinking about the first season of Disney Gallery for The Mandalorian, I'm wondering, do you think that they must have realized that no one was watching, like the 5 episodes that they put out for the
Yeah.
first season? So they must have been like, yeah, we just got to do one to hold people's attention. Do you think that's what happened?
I think so, because like since then they've also released Assembled for the MCU shows, and those are single episode, hour-ish long documentaries encompassing the whole season. Obviously, it doesn't get as in depth as you could have with the roundtable thing for Mando season 1, but I do think having that contained, tight documentary style thing to go over the exciting stuff of the season or the most talked about aspects of it is probably a smart choice. And now, again, in hindsight, the fact that Luke wasn't in there makes sense because of the reasons we're talking about. But I am excited to watch this. I think Mark Hamill was talking about it again recently, on his Twitter or Instagram, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, definitely excited to actually hear insight from Favreau, Filoni, Mark Hamill, other members of the cast, and like see what it was like for them to bring that to life. Because you're right, it was a big moment. So exciting.
Yeah. I have a question for you about Star Wars behind the scenes stuff.
Sure.
When you were a kid, like, how often did you watch? Because like on the DVDs for like the prequels and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
there was like a special features section, and they had like a ton of featurettes like about the behind the scenes of like each movie. Do you remember those at all? Did you watch those?
Definitely when I got the Blu-ray of 1 to 6, like that the book Blu-ray, I have that still, and
Yeah.
there's like 3 discs I think of bonus features for the originals, the prequels, and then other ancillary stuff. But definitely I watched a lot of that. And when I was very young, I had a VHS tape of a special called Science Star Wars or something like that, and it went over a lot of the way they just made things work for the effects of the films in the original trilogy. So yeah, I've always loved learning about the behind the scenes for Star Wars. Are there any like highlights for you off those prequel ones?
I just remember when I was a kid, I honestly forget what it was called, but it was like this like handheld video player. And I had like these like, like mini DVDs. I forget what it even was, but it was basically like behind the scenes, and C3PO and R2D2 were like hosting it, and they would like bring in like, I don't know, it's very interesting, like bring in like facts about like, the making of behind the scenes of the movies. And then also just like I remember popping in, the DVDs when I was a kid, and like just not watching the movies and just going straight to the special features
Mm-hmm.
and watching all the behind the scenes stuff, just because I always thought it was cool to have a look, a lens into the making of, and like George Lucas's mind and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've always loved that for like any movie that I'm
Yeah.
really into. Like I remember watching the special features for like Pirates of the Caribbean, and I think like Spider-Man, the Raimi movies, like seeing how they did all
Mhm.
those is really cool. Um, One highlight I'll throw out from the special features for the prequels is when they were designing the clone trooper kit, right? Like just everything about the clones. I think it was either Lucas or somebody on the art team were like, "Hey, we need a gun. How do we do the clone gun?" And they took the stormtrooper gun and like flipped it upside down and like added a longer barrel, and it's the exact same thing. So like it's just super cool
That's
stuff.
funny.
So
Yeah, it's cool. Like I have like this one thing of like, I think it was the episode 3 behind the scenes, and the art team like brought in a bunch of concepts for General Grievous, and it's basically just like George Lucas at this big like whiteboard, just being like, yeah, I like that one, I don't like that one, I like that one, I don't like that one.
mhm,
It's just cool to see like the creative process like, unfold before your eyes,
for sure,
especially for something that we all love. Um,
definitely.
anyways, so let's move on to some more TV news, unless you have anything else to say about the gallery stuff, Christian.
Nope.
So yeah, we can talk a little bit more about some TV news. Moving from Mandalorian, something that has been released, to something that has yet to be released, the Obi-Wan Kenobi TV show. So that's been filming for about 3 months now, and we've seen some things that have leaked out of there. We've heard some rumors, but one of the actors cast in the TV show, his name is Sung Kang. He's starring in the now in theaters F9, and so he was announced to be in the show, but we're not really sure about what his role is until now. But before getting into the rumors about what his role may be, he talked to Rotten Tomatoes, I think it was last week, and he just kind of described what the mood was on set. He said, quote, "The feeling that I get on set is every single crew member, you look in their eyes and it's like a kid going, I grew up watching Star Wars, like this is my dream to be here. To see one of the Star Wars characters or Darth Vader character or one of the Jedi's walking around." So that's interesting. We get the confirmation that he's at least, or it seems like we get a confirmation that he's at least like seen Darth Vader on set or something like that.
Hmm.
And interestingly enough, he says, one of the Jedi's walking around. Um, So as we know that this takes place 10 years after the Revenge of the Sith, 10 years after Order 66. And so hearing him say that there are Jedi walking around definitely raises some eyebrows. What do you think, Christian?
Definitely. I've seen a lot of headlines from Kenobi this past week in terms of rumors that I'm sure we are gonna get into very soon.
Yeah.
Just slightly jumping ahead, no details, but knowing about those things, to me, also knowing about
I
the
mean,
rematch of the century, right? Like, it seems like we might be getting into a lot of fan service with this show,
yeah.
and having multiple Jedi, even if it's just two, right? Like, I think makes sense. I think you and I were almost expecting there to be another Jedi that finds Obi-Wan and sort of has to bring him onto
Yeah.
this adventure, right? So, like, that makes sense. I really like him in the Fast and Furious series, so I'm still excited that he's at play here. But it's interesting that he's seen Vader, he's seen Jedi, so I'm seeing where you're going with this, and I'm wondering what his role will be and how large it will be in the canon.
Well, I think it might be worth to talk about the rumor that's specifically circling around Sun Kang, just to give this some context. So there's been heavy rumors, and I don't want to try to mix rumor between fact, but I think it is worth talking about. So there have been some rumors flying around, take it with a grain of salt, that Sun Kang is going to be playing the fifth brother, who we saw in Rebels. He's an Inquisitor, created by the Empire to hunt down the remaining Jedi. So that's the rumor. And with that in mind, it kind of makes a little bit of sense for him to say that he's seen the Darth Vader character, or one of the Jedi. So yeah, I mean, what do you think about that? We might see some big crossover from what we've already known about this period in terms of the Inquisitors and what we saw in Star Wars Rebels, kind of coming to life here on on TV if this rumor is true.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I've been expecting at least a Inquisitor in this show. I'm not super familiar with the fifth brother. I didn't finish Rebels, right? But like, yeah, I think having Inquisitors involved in the Kenobi show just to tie it all together would make sense. Um, I mean, we could go wild here. Would be awesome if we got a Cal Kestis appearance, but like again, I don't think that's very likely. But I'm with you. I think if anything, if this show is going to get involved into the weeds of Star Wars, I would appreciate if it was bringing animated show, video game canon into live action more than, hey, you know this guy, right? He's 20 miles away from Obi-Wan right now. We should check in on him, right? Like, I'd prefer if we skewed this way, because it does make sense for Inquisitors to be hunting Obi-Wan more so, in my opinion, than for some reason R2-D2 to show up, right? Like, I think that's more likely. I don't know how you feel, though.
No, totally. I mean, I also think it's interesting, like, we know that Order 66 happened, and we know that there are, a fair amount of Jedi who lived through the initial, like, Order 66. And so, just fleshing out, the Jedi Purge and like its after effects, and the Empire trying to sort of like clean up their loose, like, tie up their loose ends. And I think that's an interesting, way to sort of bring this period of Star Wars history to life. I am really interested because, as this article notes that I got this from, we did see in May a video of Moses Ingram doing some what appears to be like lightsaber training. He's like in the video, sort of like flinging around. It looks like standard lightsaber training stuff. So I mean, maybe these Inquisitors are after Obi-Wan. Maybe they're after Obi-Wan and a cadre of Jedi that we have yet to meet. Either way, I think this is a really thrilling sort of like set piece, really thrilling period to sort of put Obi-Wan in, and a lot of interesting ways that this can go. So I'm super interested to see if there is going to be that element of like sort of the after effects and the remnants of Order 66, because I'm sure Obi-Wan has had a lot of time to think about it, and it's
Mhm.
probably been pretty hard for him, I would assume.
Yeah, and I think that would also be in line with sort of the story you and I want to see out of his character in this show, of like him being aware the Inquisitors are hunting down remaining Jedi, and then what, like, should I do something about this? Like, I'm watching over this kid. I don't feel right abandoning him, but also I know I could be of assistance to these Jedi who are being hunted. You know, like I think that's a really interesting struggle for him to explore, that would also bring up his guilt of Anakin and the prequels, which you and I really want to see explored in the show. So that, I'm still hoping, is the main driving force behind his character arc in the series. Uh but it sounds like we might be getting some greatest hits level of fanfare for this series, I guess.
I guess so. I mean, I think that that was communicated pretty clearly when they said Darth Vader was going to show up.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, yeah, this is going to be a little fan servicey, but that's okay. I'm all for it as long as they can tell a compelling story, which I'm sure they can. The character is ripe for it.
Definitely. And all of this stuff makes me feel that, for sure. Everything we talked about so far is absolutely like, yeah, this is interesting. It makes sense in the world. And we can flesh this out and we can tell an interesting story here, for sure. I think,
Oh my God.
yeah, what's holding me up is more of the other rumors, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I feel like it would be hard to not make a compelling story during this time, just because just the ingredients are just right,
Mhm.
like it's the perfect, like it's all perfect. And so I'm not really worried about that. I'm just worried about I'm not worried about really anything. I'm just interested and curious about the direction they're going to take it. But at least for one, it does seem as though the mood on the set is pretty jubial. Or I don't even know if that's a word. You know what I
No,
mean?
it is. It
Joyous.
is.
Um, and one interesting quote that I just thought was kind of cool, kind of cute, that uh, Sun Kang said to Rotten Tomatoes. He said, "I used to dress up in these Halloween costumes. Like I had a Darth Vader one and a Luke Skywalker one. It was all put together with like duct tape after a while. And the fact that I'm actually on set and they're putting a Star Wars costume on me, come on, dude. It's like pinch yourself, right?" And that's pretty sick. I would absolutely have the same sort of feeling if they were strapping on some sort of Jedi robe to me or whatever.
Hell yeah, that's awesome.
So why don't we? I think this is the perfect way to sort of transition to some of the rumors in the Force. We did touch upon one of them. The first one that I have here is that Sung Kang is rumored to play the fifth brother in the Obi-Wan series, but we do have some more Obi-Wan rumors. I'm going to start with the what I think is the least the lightest hitter here. So there's a rumor that C3PO and R2D2 are going to make an appearance in this TV show. That comes from LRM Online. I'm not familiar with them, but yeah, I mean this almost makes sense. R2D2 clearly has an idea of who Obi-Wan is. He didn't get his mind wiped at the end of Revenge of the Sith like C3PO did. So I'm not sure where they are in this time. I would assume that maybe they're on Alderaan with Bail Organa, because we do see them on the Tantive V4 in the beginning of A New Hope. So they're working with the Organas, or at least Leia. So interesting stuff. I'm always down to see C3PO and R2D2. It's almost like, what is it Star Wars without them? Yes, but it definitely makes it a little bit better.
Definitely. And I honestly, out of everything, I feel like that one is the most believable,
Hmm.
because like they got thrown in Rogue One. I don't think they were in Solo, but they've been in every other movie, right? Like if it's
Yeah.
about Obi-Wan and it's this era, I think it makes sense, especially because of what you said, being tied to the Organas, and what this other rumor is would make sense
Yeah.
if she is involved. I imagine 3PO and R2 would be involved in at least a scene. I'm not saying they're on for the ride, but like I believe that they're in the show.
Yeah, I would be surprised if they weren't in it for at least, a bit. Like you said, it doesn't even have to be along for the ride. They could just be in the background. I'm sure that they are. That's not
Yeah,
very surprising to
like
me.
you remember that episode of Rebels in season 1 where it's like, oh, Ezra sees like some escort for a big political person, and then it's like, oh, surprise, 3PO and R2 are there. Like, I bet it's that level. Like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, they're around for a bit and then they go away.
Right. Like, R2D2 showing up with Luke at the end of Mandalorian.
Sure,
It's
yeah,
kind of
something
like,
like
oh,
that.
obviously.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like, oh, well, obviously he'd be with him. Like,
yeah, yeah.
um, it's not that surprising. But you did kind of, refer to the other rumor, and this is the heavy hitter rumor, and I really want to spend some time and just sort of dissect this with you, Christian.
Sure.
But there is a rumor that Princess Leia, a young Princess Leia, child Princess Leia, is going to be in the Obi-Wan series. So it's said that child actress Vivian Lyra Blair is said to be playing young Princess Leia. She's had a big few roles already. She's been in Netflix's We Can Be Heroes and Bird Box. I honestly I'm not familiar with her, but um,
I
having being taking place 10 years after Revenge of the Sith, that would put Leia as 10 years old,
mhm.
as well as Luke. Cinelinx first reported this, and they also say, interestingly, quote, "The stuff dealing with Leia is pretty much the impetus for the whole show and what gets Obi-Wan into another adventure." So that's some pretty big news. It sort of feels like the Mandalorian and Grogu, or like, you know, the Bad Batch and Omega, and now it might be like, Obi-Wan and Leia in some way. What do you think about this, Christian?
You know, I'm not a huge fan of it until I remembered that Leia's first response at the end of Rogue One is to contact Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then it kind of made sense. I'm like, you know what, actually, maybe this makes sense. Maybe this is fine. Because I think at first, initial blush, right, it's like, Luke, I think, would have been a bit of a stretch and a little fan servicey. And I think Luke also
Mm-hmm.
would have been that level of like, Obi-Wan went to Mos Eisley today, and oh, there's Owen Lars, and oh, look, there's a little kid next to him. Like,
Yeah.
that's what I was expecting, but at least that would make sense because they live within like a 50-mile radius of each other, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that to me made sense. Leia, though, on Alderaan, like, I think maybe a bit of a stretch on the initial time I heard this rumor, right? But the more I think of it, the fact that Leia knows Obi-Wan is capable. I know it, she says like years ago, you served my father in the Clone Wars, so like she knows the stories of Obi-Wan. But I'm wondering, Mike. I have a theory now on
Yeah.
what the impetus is here. So I think we know she's being cared for by Bail Organa, right? Jimmy Smits. We're gonna probably see him again, which is awesome. Um,
Yeah, of course. I'm sure we will.
I wonder if it's interesting because the rumor does say that she is the beginning of the whole journey to get him in on another adventure, right? I wonder if young Leia gets a Force vision. And then Bail Organa is
Mm,
like, I have no idea what's going on. This is a little scary. Who are you gonna call? My friend the Jedi, you know? And then maybe
yeah.
this is like just pilot. Like maybe she has a vision. Maybe it's something really important to Obi-Wan. They contact each other. He goes there, meets her, talks about it, Force connection, and then he goes off to do a thing. That I think might be likely, makes sense narratively in the timeline, and again would be a way to handle this that I wouldn't feel is cheap. Because everything they've talked about with the show, everything Deborah Chow has talked about, I don't think they want it to feel cheap, and I don't think it will. But there's a risk there, I think. I don't know how you feel.
I think there is definitely a risk there. I think whenever you're dealing with a character that is already established and you're going to sort of like create a pretty big new like interpretation of the character, I think you always run the risk of that. But Star Wars has a pretty good track record, I think, of calling back to things and have making it work. Like, let's just look at the whole sequel trilogy, for instance. I mean, like, those are characters, taken at different points in their lives when it comes to the canon, and it worked. So I'm not saying that this can't work, but it definitely runs the risk. I like your theory about maybe she has a force vision. She definitely is force sensitive, so that would make sense.
Hmm.
And when you were talking about Luke, Luke being, on this adventure, or maybe like the catalyst for Obi-Wan's adventure, I was thinking, yeah, it doesn't really make sense. Like when we are introduced to Luke and Leia in A New Hope, um, the whole point of Luke is that he's just been stuck on a farm for his whole life, and he has had no adventure whatsoever, and he's lived a pretty monotonous and boring life, and he wants to leave. Contrast that with his twin sister Leia, who is literally like 19 years old and is a senator in, is like a leading political figure. She obviously knows what's going on. She's like been involved since she was a kid. She was raised to be a princess. Like she has a lot of different, she was raised differently than Luke, obviously. So yeah, I think it would make sense in terms from like a story perspective that the catalyst for it, if we were going to choose between Leia and Luke for being the catalyst for Obi-Wan's adventure, it wouldn't really, I just don't see any pathways for Luke, right? Like
Sure.
what
Like,
is he like, what is he up to, you know?
do you think that it, because I don't imagine Leia's going to be around for the whole time like Grogu or Omega was,
No.
and I don't think Luke would have been either. But I feel like you could write a way of like Obi-Wan's chilling, and then an Inquisitor shows up and tries to kill Luke or something. Because like maybe somebody heard a rumor that about his lineage. Like I think there's a way you can make it make sense with Luke, but for sure I do think it makes way more sense with Leia. Now that we're talking about it in terms of the plot, yes, physically it would make more sense to be with Luke, but if there's a Jedi problem in Bail Organa's household, I think he would call his Jedi that he knows, and it's probably not going to be Yoda. So,
Right. And at the end of Revenge of the Sith, we do have that scene where it's Obi-Wan, Bail, and Yoda, and they're kind of just like figuring out who's going to take what child,
mhm.
and like protect after them. So it's not like Obi-Wan is completely oblivious to the fact that like Luke has a sister, like far from it. He's doing his job protecting Luke. If something strange were to start happening with Leia, whether it be like a force vision, or I don't know, maybe she was like abducted or kidnapped or something like that. I don't even know. Like it could really go in any direction. It would make sense that Obi-Wan would feel that sort of responsibility, um, to protect Leia, even though like he wasn't the one put in charge of her to begin with. That was Bail and Brea Organa. If like you said, if Bail Organa came to his Jedi friend and was like, "Yo, I need your help," Obi-Wan would feel obligated to do so.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I think it totally makes sense. But it's just, how it's going to happen is a question. Like how if Leia is going to be this vehicle for Obi-Wan to get into this adventure, how she plays a part in the plot is a question, and I think we're going to have to wait to see when it comes out. But I like your theory. Like I said, I was listening to Star Wars Theory last night actually, and he was talking about, maybe it's like a Grogu gets kidnapped, Leia gets kidnapped, and he's got to go. I don't know, something like that. I guess it could go in any way.
Mhm.
What do you think about maybe do you think it would make sense that like Leia may get kidnapped or something like that? I just feel like it has like a sort of same vibe as like Grogu or like or Omega or something like that. And both of those characters get kidnapped in their
I
respective
yeah,
journeys.
I think that makes sense with the type of story they're telling with Mando and Bad Batch, because it's like those are mercenaries, you know. I think if you're telling a Jedi story, I think you want to have some Jedi element, and I do think it. In my eyes, I think it's much more likely that this an Obi-Wan problem has to be a Jedi problem, and I do think Leia does have a tie to the Force and the lineage of the Skywalkers enough that one, Yoda thought she was going to be a good alternative, and two, would make sense that like in her adolescence she has like this surge of force capabilities the way that maybe Anakin did when he was younger, and there needs to be an explanation behind it. And I think it would make enough sense that I think they could do a kidnapping route, but at that point feel like Bale could hire literally any bounty hunter, you know?
Anybody. Yeah.
Yeah, so
No, you're right. I mean, I was just kind of thinking about, the possible ways that they could make this work. And like you said, I think you're definitely right when you come to the fact that like Leia is force sensitive, and yeah, it has to be it's got to be connected to the force in some way.
yeah, like
I guess we're just gonna have to see. Yeah.
mhm. I don't know what her vision
No,
would
what are you gonna say?
entail. I don't know if it's going to be like, hey, there's this other Jedi that's in help and they're calling out in the Force, and I heard her or something. Like, you have to go help her because Vader's hunting her. I don't know if that's the angle they go with it, or if she's like, I have a vision about my mother, or if I have a vision about XYZ. Like, I don't know. But I do think it's something that will be set up in the first episode. Obi-Wan will be like, this is important enough for the Force, the Jedi, and myself that I have to go take care of this, and then that's the show.
Well, that's the thing. I feel like it would have to have that weight, right? Like
Yeah.
it'd have to be something like only Obi-Wan can fix this. You know what I mean? And like he has to fix this, because if it were like Obi-Wan's got to sort of like weigh his pros and cons here. If it was like a Jedi that was being hunted by Darth Vader, like, is that really worth it for him to like sacrifice him, like to potentially sacrifice himself and Luke and Leia to go like save one Jedi? Like, it might not be, right? So I guess we're gonna have to see the sort of, maybe there's a line that like Obi-Wan has trouble crossing or something like that.
Sure.
I don't know. Interesting stuff all around. I'm excited for this series. There's a lot of stuff to be excited for,
Oh, yeah.
and I can't wait. They've been filming this thing, and I just want to see some of it.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll get a teaser by December.
I hope so. So moving on from that, we have some Mandalorian rumors to talk about. So I saw this on Dork Side of the Force. So there's been some rumors that Mandalorian season 3 is going to be dropping in spring 2022. And this comes from Dork Side of the Force, like I said, on the site Edelweiss, which is a trade site for books and publishers. There's a planned young readers book called The Mandalorian Boba Fett Returns, and it included a potential release date in the selling points. The site said the Book of Boba Fett premieres on Disney Plus December 2021, and then goes on to mention season 3 of The Mandalorian premieres on Disney Plus spring 2022. I looked on the website and you can't see it anymore, so I'm not sure if they took it off, but it is very curious. It looks like a pretty legit like trade site, and if this was true, if this actually did say that is very interesting, because we haven't heard anything about season 3 of The Mandalorian yet. So I know that kind of misses their initial hope of getting season 3 out there by Christmas. That seems increasingly unlikely, just of what we've talked about here on the show.
Right.
But spring 2022, that's promising, I think.
Yeah, I think, because we've heard rumors about Mando season 3 hitting within the next 12 months. We've heard those rumors a bit. We've talked about them a bit in previous episodes. But
yeah,
to me, in conjunction with the next thing we're going to talk about, if this really is true, this tells me that Din Djarin is maybe not going to have the character arc we thought he was going to have for season 3. If he's going to be mask on the whole time because Pedro's shooting The Last of Us for the next year and a half.
Yeah. So, I guess we could talk about the next rumor. So there's been some rumors also flying around the internet that Mando season 3 is either about to start filming or that it already has. According to Bespin Bulletin, Katie Sackhoff, who plays Bo-Katan Kryze, posted a video on her Instagram account where she said that she needed to get a COVID-19 test so she can go back to work. And then she sarcastically says, "What could it be on?" So people are that leads people to believe that she might be working on Mandalorian season 3. It certainly would make a lot of sense because at the end of season 2, her character is very, much entwined with, Mandalorian and Din Djarin. But like you said, it is curious because Pedro Pascal is currently filming The Last of Us for HBO. So yeah, I mean, I think it's increasingly I think it's likely that we'll see this sometime early next year. It's just weird that we haven't heard anything solid come from Disney Lucasfilm on, them filming or getting to work on this.
Yeah, I think that's very curious. I'm wondering, like I teased, maybe season 2 leaves off in a place where he's very vulnerable. He has a new character path open for him, and mask is off. Maybe he's abandoning the ways of this cult, but if he's not there, mask gotta be on. Is it going to be a lot of action scenes? Is he going to be front and center? I imagine he would be because he's kind of the driving force of the show so far. If Grogu's gone, especially, like, is he going to just go harder on his old ways because he's feeling loss of his son and he wants to just like bury himself in his work? I don't know. Like, what's going to happen with Din Djarin? Probably not what I thought it was going to happen, but.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems hard to like tell those stories that we were thinking they might tell, because like you mentioned, Din Djarin at the end of season 2 is like very much seems like he's kind of like throwing or not throwing away, but pushing aside like his own like dogmatic view of being a Mandalorian. And yeah, Pedro Pascal like literally physically cannot make it on set to film. They can't like change the actor, like
Yeah.
Din Djarin's gonna have to be wearing his damn helmet. So I don't know. I don't know where this is gonna lead. Do you think? I'm thinking that they might just double down on like, yeah, forget about all the personal character development that Din Djarin had, but what about the dark saber? You know, like I'm thinking that they might just like try to like, I don't know, push that aside and just like go full on the dark saber conflict between Bo-Katan and Din Djarin. What do you think?
I mean, maybe. I think that's possible. If it eventually gets to a point where it's like, I don't know, spy versus spy, and they both are always geared up because they could be assassinated at any moment or something. Like, I don't know, but yeah, I think there's an easy way you can write around it, I think, and hopefully still get some character growth out of him. Where for the few times you're able to shoot with Pedro Pascal, like maybe you get him for 2 days and he can just shoot all of his mask off scenes then. But it is definitely tight for a spring 2022 release. But yeah, I'm eagerly anticipating some official announcement about season 3 Mandalorian, and I have been for a while, but even more so the past couple of weeks. I really would like to hear some press release what's going on with this show right now.
I think our questions will soon be answered. I'd say that if we don't hear anything within the next like few weeks, that's cause for concern. I don't think this show's coming out this year. That's just I don't think that's happening. I think that's pretty obvious. I could be wrong. I don't know, but I just don't think that's happening. But hopefully Disney sometime soon at least confirms that this is being filmed, or says, "Hey, we're starting to film this next week," or something like that. Because it's just been the lack of news is questionable. Kind of gets me worried. So we'll see.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be a lot because Book of Boba Fett is about to kick off marketing within the next 2 months probably. So you don't want to overshadow that with tons of Mando stuff, but like just
No.
literally just some like picture from John Favreau of a black and white photo of a set that just says season 3 or something. Like it's like, okay, well now we know it's gonna probably come out sometime within the next 8 months. So any
Yeah,
official thing.
yeah. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't even have to be that. It could just literally be like a confirmation to a journalist asking would be nice,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
Like just like, yep, that's happening, and then we could just run with that. So hopefully we hear something from that soon. If at the very least we'll be seeing the Book of Boba Fett. So big hype for that.
Oh yeah.
So that's it for rumors and news. Like I said, it was a big rumor week. Hopefully we have some clarifying comments on some of this stuff in the weeks coming ahead. But I think it's time to switch to the review for this episode of Jedi Knights. We're going to be talking about The Bad Batch, Season 1, Episode 12, Rescue on Ryloth. This was released on Friday. And Christian, we're getting another installment in the adventures that the Bad Batch are having on good old Ryloth with the Syndulas and Hera. And in this episode, basically the Bad Batch end up going back to Ryloth to rescue Hera's parents. So, big picture, macro lens. Christian, what did you think about this episode?
It is once again, it was solid. You know, I think I feel like with most of Bad Batch, outside of some of the early episodes, I feel like I'm a broken record at this point. I'm just enjoying watching a Star Wars thing because I think the show's fine, you know. And I think this week again, it had some of my stuff that I really like about the Bad Batch, where they just, as a team, they talk and they're like, "Hey, what are our options?" Like, really, that is my favorite element of this team, because I feel like in Star Wars, a lot of the time we don't get the big team meeting. What is our plan here? You know, like, I know we have the mission briefing in the original trilogy a few times, but that's not the same thing. Like, this is very much more personal. Like, if we disagree, maybe it might cause tension in the team. Like, we're still trying to figure out our place here. So anytime the crew is actually dealing with one another on a, like, brotherly and as well, like, strategic planning level, I'm interested. But if I'm being completely honest, I'm very surprised that we're spending more time with Ryloth. I thought we were probably going to dip out, but overall, again, solid episode. I think it's another instance of the show feeling more like Rebels in a Clone Wars style, which I'm cool with. But yeah, it was solid. What about you?
I agree. Like you said, you feel like you're a broken record every week, but I agree. I definitely, like I've said previous weeks, I've agreed with you. It's just fun watching Star Wars. These do seem very inconsequential. It is interesting to sort of get a little bit more background on the character of Hera Syndulla and the Syndulla clan and Ryloth in general, but it just seems sort of like, adventure of the week style, which is not a bad thing. It's just not exactly what I thought the show would be. I really wanted to see more conflict between, the Bad Batch and Crosshair, but it seems like, at least in the past few episodes, they kind of like get tangled up with each other in these like proxy conflicts. Like, they're not actually going after each other; they just happen to be in the same place at the same time. And that's sort of the feel that we get with Ryloth between the Bad Batch and Crosshair. Um, you know, it was fine. It seemed sort of just like the other episodes that we've been watching. I feel like there have been a lot of like rescue missions in this season. So, the Bad Batch going in, taking out, the Imperial refinery on Ryloth and rescuing the Syndulas is pretty standard stuff. But not to say that, we did get some interesting moments with Omega in the Bad Batch. I thought it was interesting that, Hunter was acting very strategically on whether or not to help the Syndulas, and, Omega sort of like helped him see, yeah, I don't know, sort of like helped him figure out like where his priorities lied, and, like helping people out. And so that was interesting, good characterization on Omega and Hunter. But overall, it was just a run of the mill standard episode, I think.
Yeah, like, I do like it when Omega feels like she has more of a say in the group, because I think that's an interesting thing to throw in there, where for so long we don't know the exact history of this team or their dynamic, but for so long they operated the same way, and now they're in a new era, and they have a little sister essentially, and she has this really wise insight a lot of the time because of her history and who she is, but there is still like a, you know, an innocence there that can get her caught up in Fennec Shand and other bounty hunters business. But I like it when they respect her enough to let her voice be heard and have a say on their plans, because I think that's interesting for this crew of mercenaries essentially to be listening to the conscience of a child. I think that's an interesting concept, again, sort of building off that Mandalorian thing, but in the case of the Bad Batch, they really have no answers, and I do like, because they're like, hey, we don't know what to really do right now, so why not listen to the kid? I think that's an interesting thing. We don't see a lot of that in Star Wars, but again, I think it feels like week to week they don't do much more than that so far, which they don't need to, but it's something I'd like to see more of, I guess, because Mike, we have 4 episodes left. Do you feel like we have 4 episodes left?
No, I don't even really know where the main story is going. Honestly don't even know if there is a main story. Like, it just seems sort of disconnected and discombobulated to me, at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm curious to talk about this once the show's wrapped up, but I wonder what the future is for this show and these characters. I don't know if this is a one-off or if they're gonna set up a future where we pick up with Omega in Book of Boba Fett and then never talk about Hunter and Wrecker again. Like, I don't know where we're going with this show, because it feels like it could be any of the options that we could think of right now, you know?
Yeah, it just feels like, it doesn't feel like, it feels like they're not really taking, it feels like they're taking their time with the show. So that kind of gives me, it sort of makes me feel like that there is going to be multiple seasons of this,
I hope.
that we're kind of just seeing the beginning. I hope so too. I think it's a really great show. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be a one-off thing, just because they seem really slow. It seems really slow and taking its time. And that's sort of the feeling that I got from Rebels, at least. A lot of those episodes were kind of slow, taking their time, building up slowly. And so that's why I would expect that the Bad Batch would have multiple seasons. But, you know, like I said earlier, it doesn't really feel like there is a main story right now. I don't know if you feel similarly. I'm having a hard time connecting the dots. I don't think there are really many dots to connect. It just seems like, you know, it's just like small little vignettes of what's happening with the Bad Batch. With the loose connection of Crosshair.
Yeah, and I think another maybe downside in a way, because there's no real connective tissue beyond that relationship that isn't fully explored in every episode. I think there is a slight downside to, like, what character that we all love is going to show up this week, you know, and then that kind of takes out some of their time to explore that relationship, that family dynamic they have, which is my favorite part of the show. Even though it's cool to see Hera and explore her history and her family, like, okay, but she's not going to be part of this crew for the rest of the season, you know? Like, I think it's different than Mandalorian going into stuff with Bo-Katan or Koska Reeves, right? Like, anything with them is different because they're consequential to the finale and where we're building with that story. Here, it's like, it doesn't feel like the Bad Batch are being impacted by these supporting characters. It feels like the Bad Batch are the supporting characters for the characters we all know, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I would say that's definitely true. Yeah, it seems like if there isn't a character that they're going to bring from a previous Star Wars piece of media like Hera, then they're going to just, like, you know, create a new one, which is, like, you know, Fennec, basically. And it seems like they keep, like you said, it seems like they keep getting distracted, or the writers get distracted with this new character, and they like you said, have less time to talk about the connections and the relationships between Bad Batch, Omega, and Crosshair.
Sure, and like, I'd really love,
like,
if we explored Fennec more. Like, that was a big thing I was excited for, and I've liked the episodes she's been in, but same with the Bad Batch, I feel like there's a tendency to get overshadowed a little bit, which is fine, it's just not what I want the most to see here.
Yeah, and then also there's this element of like I'm watching the show and I'm like, who should I be like really focusing on, right? Like, yeah, it's like all this stuff happening with Omega, but like sometimes they don't even talk about that, and they talk about like, Crosshair, and like it just seems all over the place to me, and it's hard to like sort of keep track of. And like even some stuff that they had brought up previously, all the stuff with the Kaminoans, just like seems like they haven't. When was the last time we were on Camino? Like episode 4 or something? Like I don't know. It just seems like all discombobulated, but I don't know.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to just mention. One thing I wanted to mention, unless you have something else to say about that.
No, I agree fully.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention was the seeming clone rebellion that happened in this episode. Hauser, one of the clone captains, basically helps the Syndulas and the Bad Batch. He recognizes, through his own free will, it seems, that what the Empire is doing is wrong, and he helps the Bad Batch and the Syndulas escape the Empire. And then he basically gets all of his comrades to like lay down their arms, all of his clone comrades to lay down their arms against the Empire. And it's quite the scene because, as we know, the clones have an inhibitor chip that basically controls their mind. And we would assume that Hauser and his clones also have this, but for some reason they were able to break through that and not do what the Empire told them to do. So I thought that was really interesting. It makes me wonder, do you think these inhibitor chips are starting to like lose their efficacy over time or something like that?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I'm wondering if it's about deterioration. Like, I wonder if the Empire didn't expect the lifespan of most clones to exceed a certain point, and I wonder if these clones might be living longer because the war is over, technically. They're still in some combat, but like nowhere near as much, so statistically they will be living longer, and I wonder if these inhibitor chips have a lifespan, an expiration date, and just because the war is over and there is no mass eradication of the clones, like some of them could slip through. That's where my head went to. So I think that could be interesting if that's like where we go with the final few episodes. Like, imagine the final arc of this season, the last 4 episodes, is some deterioration arc about the chips, and then the Bad Batch rallying some troops, and then having like another sort of self-contained civil war maybe would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's that, and then there's also the thought that we know that the clones have feelings. They're people, and they have basically their own thoughts, and they can make their own choices. Part of me is thinking, does the inhibitor chip, like, the inhibitor chip basically force them to, follow Order 6, but does it kind of just like stop there? Like, they could still recognize maybe like through their own morality that what they're doing is wrong. I understand the whole like good soldiers follow orders, that kind of thing, but part of me is thinking like maybe the inhibitor chips were only meant for that one moment, basically the one Order 66 moment, and over time, the clones can sort of just like move past that on their own. And maybe that's why we don't see as many clones like in the original trilogy. We don't see any clones at all, actually. So I don't know. It's just an interesting thing to think about. Either they're able to break through it with their own personal free will, or the inhibitor chips are deteriorating. I guess it sort of ends up with the fact that like we don't know exactly like what the inhibitor chip does. Like I don't know.
I mean, inhibitor means it's stopping something, so maybe it's just like stopping their cerebral part of their brain that feels sympathy for a bit. I don't know. Like,
I don't know.
But Yeah, it's very interesting.
It's
I hope
definitely something to think about.
Yeah, I hope they follow up on this in the final few episodes. I think it would be an interesting note to end the season on, considering where we start with the inhibitor chips and that whole conflict between Crosshair and Hunter on like what's actually right in that scenario. I think ending the show for this season, sort of coming back to that idea on a grander scale, and the Bad Batch has to sort of lead that, maybe could be really interesting. I don't know if that's where we're going. That's just a pure hunch and hope, but yeah, we'll see. Do you think these final 4 episodes are gonna have an arc to them, or do you expect that it's gonna be like 3 one-offs and then the big episode it has a tease for season 2?
I would say one. I want to take back what I said about the inhibitor chips. I mean, we know that they sort of like inhibit. You know, they make the clones sort of obey different protocols. So maybe it's just deteriorating, or maybe they're able to sort of break past that on their own. But going back to what you said, I think there is going to be an arc to the last 4 seasons. I think that we've sort of started to see a little bit of a breakage, maybe in Crosshair too. I don't know. I just think that there has been a lot of discussion in the Bad Batch about these inhibitor chips. We've seen like Hauser and all the clones sort of fall. I'm wondering what the big jet blast that Crosshair had to deal with. I wonder if that affected his inhibitor chip at all. I think that we're going to get answers to this, and I think that we're going to start to see some semblance of putting a bookend onto at least this season. I wouldn't be surprised if like Crosshair, they like maybe they turn Crosshair by the end of the season or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a possibility. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that could also be a sensible way to wrap up the first season, right? Or maybe he sacrifices himself for the team in a way to like help them get out of a situation. Like I could see something like that be the final note of the season, but I do expect. I hope that the next 4, at minimum 3 episodes is a self-contained story, sort of how the first 2 episodes were.
Agreed.
So
agreed. Well, we have 4 episodes left, and we'll be covering them here on Jedi Knights. But I think that kind of, wraps up the discussion that we're having about Rescue on Ryloth. Christian, is there anything else that you want to add?
No, I think we touched on all of it. Interested to see where this story goes. Before we wrap up, EA plays this week, and there's no Star Wars games. They said it. There's none. So.
Right, I forgot to say that. Big disappointment. I was hoping to see something, but I guess not.
Yep. So, no worries. You're not going to miss out on anything this week. But yeah, that's everything.
All right, man. Well, why don't you take us out to sea? You always do. You're always so good at it.
Sounds good. Mike, where can everybody find you?
Follow me on Twitter at Mike P. Connors.
Very nice. You can follow me on Twitter, Twitch, TikTok at Chun2D2, as well as here, youtube.com/joyclicks. On Jedi Knights, the playlist for the video version of the podcast is available on the channel, alongside the playlists for all of our podcasts like Excelsior, Gamescast, and the others. If you want to get the audio version of the show, you can look up Jedi Knights with no K on the podcast service of your choosing, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever you want. If you can rate a review on your given platform, it would be appreciated if you did, because it takes a quick second and helps us grow. We appreciate it very, very much. And if you want to get involved even further, patreon.com/joyclicks at the $1 and $5 tiers. $5 tier will get you producer credit on this show and every show, like Chris Sakas, Aaron Easton, and Charles Applin. So thank you very much. And I believe that is it for episode 90 of Jedi Knights. Mike, it's a pleasure as always. Love,
yes, sir.
Love flying the ship with you. It's fun.
Always flying the ship.
Hell yeah. But until next week, we're fine. Everything's fine. How are you?
May the Force be with you.
Oh, yes, you're right. Beep is up.